we
is
touched
that
a
for
little
me?
bit on that.
Yes,
on the
Chioma,
WTO.
please. Yes.
Because I'm hoping someone else who might be more conversant will handle it. I'm not going to pretend to be an
It's
expert.
the same
That's
thing.
another
It's
thing.
the same thing. The
Yeah.
WTO arrangements,
Mm-hmm.
the so-called free trade.
Because
There's nothing free about free trade. So,
that's exactly
they
what I
have a
was gonna say.
concept in economics that says you have to take advantage of your competitive advantage, right?
Mm-hmm.
True.
So the so-called rich
Economics
countries,
of scale.
exactly, they have industries. So let them focus on making cars, planes, pharmaceuticals. Africa, you focus on agriculture. And then we
Food
trade,
production.
free trade, right?
Mhm.
You import manufacturers, we import food. It's all baloney. It ends up we are importing cars.
Coming
and
to
we're
an
importing
agreement
food.
as to who does what,
There's no agreement.
but making sure that
Yes.
you are on the side of advantage. You're the one making the most out of this agreement.
Exactly. That's where the
I mean-
WTO rules come into it, World Trade Organization.
I mean, the
Yeah.
tenets of the World Bank and the IMF is simply saying, okay, Africa continues to remain a resource market for the westernized economies. Whatever it is, we can squeeze out of them. And right now, we're about to tell you what you're going to plant, when you're going to plant it, how you're going to plant it, and what can go into the ground. Oh, by the way, you don't even own the land. Very good. You can come and work for a fee.
Yeah.
So can you see how all of this ties into what we've been talking about so far? When we first of all started, we talk about the media, which is the projection, the image of what Africa is to the world. And in fact, what Africa is to themselves. Because if you don't divide the house, how are you going to get to control them? And then the land comes into play. The land, Britain, by its very colonial policy, was the fact that, okay, you know what? We're going to bring our population in. You are going to have to move aside. And once you do that, what do we then do? One funny thing Sister Chioma was speaking to, and I was laughing, but I wrote it down and I just remembered now, was when the Europeans came in, they didn't even know how to farm.
No, they didn't.
And one of the key things they did was stop the Africans from competing with them. So how do they do that? They strip them off the land and then tax them using vagrant laws, i.e. if you're just standing and loafing around, we'll tax you. Where do you get the money to pay that fine? You go and work for the European farmer. When he says work, he says plant. You, in your mindset, is like you think he understands what planting means. You go and plant as you normally would. Who gets the yield? The guy who doesn't even know how to plant a corn. There you go. And now we're reversing, and now we're reversing the whole gambit again. But this time with a new generation.
But the other thing to add also, they also banned some crops. So this is nothing new. During the colonial era, they said you are not allowed to grow this,
food crops,
this, this, and this. In French colonies, they were actually imprisoned if they grew something which was not approved by the colonial regime. Just think about that.
And then they did this whole thing where they made it look like if you grew the things that they liked, you're so civilized. And the problem is that they had brainwashed people into wanting to be called civilized. And so
and these Africans are proud, right?
What do you mean eating Irish potato? Irish.
You're still eating millet. What's wrong with you?
It's so painful.
Backward foods.
Really painful. I don't know.
You're making me intentionally. When I visit my parents, intentionally, I will say, let's go back to that old food. I don't want to see a potato on my plate. Millet every day.
I mean, even what you just said now is, if you really look at it, who is aware that majority of what we now call cash crops are not even indigenous to Africa? Cocoa was introduced into Ghana, I think, 1896 by the British. So they tested the land. What's it called? Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Nigeria. western part of Nigeria to be specific, are the only places where this plant will grow. And so when it did grow, guess who gets the market? They first of all set up what is called the marketing board. The only people who can buy it are these marketing boards at a set price. So the farmer, beginning at the start of the year, is working towards that budget. If it doesn't meet up, or if its produce are decided not to be fit for market, guess what happens? That entire harvest season is gone.
Wow.
Yeah, that's only part of it. The marketing board also did not give the farmers the world price of the commodity. So if cocoa is selling, I'm just picking a random number, at 100 pounds per ton overseas, the farmer would probably get 10,
Maybe 15.
10 pounds instead of, at the most 25. And the colonial regime would keep 75%. So that's daylight robbery for years and years and years,
Basically, everything you're describing is still the norm in global relationships. And everything that we're talking about in relation to food or UPOV is the norm across every single thing that can be called a sector. And even what you would call free trade areas or whatever, they were only set up not for the convenience of, like, for instance, any free trade areas that may exist in Africa were not set up for the convenience of Africans, but more for the convenience of multinational corporations operating in these areas so that they can be able to get their raw materials as easily and conveniently as they need it. There is nothing that has been done. I mean, like when you talked about, just the general manipulation of realities, that's what it is. There's nothing that has been done that is, let's make sure that Africa is thriving. Everything is to ensure that Africa remains as subservient, as needy, as weak, and as possible, so that it just kowtows to the needs of whoever it is pulling the strings somewhere else. And the unfortunate thing is that, I'm sorry, the middle class again, who should understand these things, have become the defenders of the prison system that actually enslaves them and their children. And so many people, when they discover the things that we're sharing are actually true, are horrified, but sometimes they're angry with you as the messenger. One person yelled at us the other day because we were coming against GMOs, and why this person was trying to get some kind of benefit from the system, and they were not able to access it. Now, the whole way that we live in the world is all upside down. Because what has happened is, once we embraced capitalism, we took away room for us to be people. So everything has now become about the pursuit of coin. If you're chasing coin, then you don't have time to look at the face of your brother or your sister to the left or the right of you to see if they have need. Because your pursuit is to gain for self. It's not really about how do I then now turn around and become beneficial to those who are around me. People will pause for a breath maybe when they've hit $1 million USD or 100 million, whatever it is, and then say, hey, now I have so much, maybe I should help somebody. But that was never the point of it. The point of community is to have a common unity as we move towards a goal that is beneficial for the entirety. And the challenge with what they've done by labeling things capitalism, socialism, whatever other isms they've done, is that it's taken away room for people to just remember that their neighbor is hungry.
Right.
You'll attract some kind of label.
Yeah.
But there has to be room for compassion.
It's a form of demonization, actually, really.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's really terrible. And so if we continue to live in this structure that the world has set for itself, then we're doomed, because UPOV is now protected by what society has deemed to be the legal system. And they've given it their stamp of approval because they say society, after all, needs order. And this order is enforced by the legal system. And so as long as you write it on a paper and somebody signs it, then everybody who even didn't know about it is bound by it.
Right.
But it's okay because it keeps things in order.
Yeah.
But we have to be brave enough to check every level of society and see what is governing it and what's holding it together. And that's why when I said earlier, whatever is your area of mandate, because it's not necessarily that you have a strength or an interest in the area of food or agriculture or even media, but maybe law is your specialty and you have a way of sussing out all the sneaky little, clauses, in
Caveats.
international agreements. Yes, and you can expose them to people like, Kumbukeni and tell them, hey guys, by the way, here's
We
one
invite
thing.
you to, yes.
Right. In the area of health, here's what's happening and what can happen in the case of another pandemic, which they're playing around with, or they've already gotten people to sign up to because they used fear as a tool. In the area of agriculture, this is the thing. And so law is key because people have decided that they want to bind things by law. And the law that they're using is not necessarily moral. It's just legal.
Yeah.
And
we need to remind them
problem. Right.
that at one time, even slavery was legal, you see.
Exactly.
So just
Exactly.
because it's the law
doesn't mean it's right.
Yes.
Right. And it also depends on who's making that law. So if a criminal is making a law, that's questionable. So